So, attempting to tell the story of how I became sort of possessed to learn to make Brahmi ghee with the herb Bacopa. Bacopa was my herb to study in Intro to Herbs, and the reason I chose it at that time was because I had had a consult with a MUIH student, and she had put me on Bacopa for my increasing perimenopausal lack of focus, increased anxiety, etc. It really seemed to help. I was really surprised by that. And so when it came time last fall to choose an herb, I decided to choose Bacopa. So while I was learning a lot about the current scientific investigations and studies and successes and positive findings about Bacopa with everything from Alzheimer's to anxiety to ADD, I kept running into mention of the Brahmi ghee. And to quote a line from the Frawley and Ladd, The Yoga of Herbs, Brahmi ghee is an important medicine for the mind and heart that should be kept in every home. So between feeling like I had personally had success with a Bacopa tincture, the fact that Alzheimer's runs in my family, the fact that I've dealt with anxiety and taken a pharmaceutical for way more years than I'd like to admit, and the fact that two of my adult kids who are very successful in their jobs take stimulants for ADHD. I've just been sort of possessed to learn to make this ghee. So while there's no shortage of ghee recipes and videos online, I didn't feel like I had enough specifics for the traditional Ayurvedic way of making this ghee. So again, back in the first trimester, I had located a woman in Hawaii, an Ayurvedic practitioner who has a company, Hale Pule, and she makes and sells a number of medicated ghees. She agreed to have a FaceTime conversation where she went through her process, and she was invaluable, really, during the heat of the moment these last few days when I just had questions that you don't really know that they're going to come up until you're in the middle of them and they come up. So I'm going to start with my challenges, and I had quite a few. I really did. I had never done any sort of decoction in this kind of volume. My Bacopa and my ashwagandha ghee, they both started with 250 grams of the herb, and I decocted them in 4,000 mLs of water. So that's the 1 to 16. Then I simmered that for however long, a few hours, until it was at 1,000 mLs. Whereas you can see in this case, it wasn't quite 1,000, so then I added enough water to make it 1,000, which is probably better said as a liter. So then that 1 liter of decocted herb, called the quath, is added to 1 liter of ghee, and you simmer a strong bubble. Again, here's where Myra uses the ginger. I did not. You bubble that until you are able to stick a piece of paper into the concoction and pull it back out, and if you were to stick it into a flame, it should not crackle. So I stuck multiple pieces of paper in and then into the flame multiple times, and was quiet and compared that to lighting the paper by itself, etc. So anyway, that also took a very long time. So this picture is on the bottom is the ashwagandha with the ghee, and on top is just the bacopa. So again, no using utensils, just waiting for that piece of paper to crackle. And then comes the straining, and as you can see from these photos, I had a lot of question about how that ended up. I did send these photos to Myra, just wondering, did I need to restrain or just compost all of the dark stuff, leave the dark stuff. And she advised me, particularly on this last one, that the one to the far right, just go ahead and compost that. I did restrain the 4th one. Interestingly, the first one I did, which I did just slightly different ratio. I did a 1:8:4 that was referenced in Anne McIntyre's herbal book. I had really no brown, so I don't know exactly why that is, whether it was the herb or the cooking or what. So a little time check now. It was Friday evening, late, and I now had completed the bacopa ghee, the ashwagandha ghee, and the shatavari ghee, and I realized I had 2 problems. I had 500 mLs of decocted bacopa without a home, and I had only this much ghee left to do my trifala ghee. I knew the strong bacopa decoction was something I didn't want to waste, but it's pretty nasty tasting by itself. So I came up with the idea, maybe I could turn this into an infused oil, preparing that in the Ayurvedic traditional way. So I sent off a brief email to Myra, and she said, yes, just proceed the exact same way, but use sesame oil. So I was excited again. I would do that the next morning. I go to check out my sesame oil supply, and I have less than 100 mLs. I live in the boondocks, and believe it or not, in an area where organic sesame oil is likely not to be found. So once again, what was I going to do? I started to think about options. I could go to the store and get more butter and make more ghee, and that didn't really sound very like a very good option. So I have some really great sourced Greek olive oil that I buy every year in Florida and bring back in, I think it's 5 liter containers. And so I thought, well, why don't I try making this with olive oil? Not quite as Ayurvedic, but excellent oil. And by the way, I forgot to mention that I had already decided that I also wanted to make it a combination of ashwagandha and bacopa. So I proceeded, I decocted, I think it was 125 grams of ashwagandha, and then combined that so that I had 1,000 mLs of decoction and put it into my olive oil. So it wasn't until um, I got everything going. It was before this point in the process, but I'm cooking away here, and I start to think about not heating up the oil. And I'm thinking about olive oil versus sesame and not getting as hot. But why is that? Am I going to cause some carcinogenic type of activity? Or is it because you don't want to do that to the olive oil because then it doesn't smell and taste as well? Or what? So I started, just digging in some of my books again, and I was happy to find in the green textbook, he comments about a hot infusion oil method that was taken from a late 19th century physiomedical text in which the temperature was raised in the fixed oil up to 140 to 160 for 4 hours. So anyway, then he comments on how he would not take his oils up that high in heat, but these were good therapists and pharmacists, and so blessed be the diversity is what he says. So I continued to ponder that whole thing most of the afternoon, knowing certainly that in Ayurveda they take the sesame oil up that high, and so I will certainly be interested if anybody has some feedback on that. I will say, though, that I was extremely excited when I was able to strain my ashwagandha bacopa infused olive oil, or decocted, I'm sorry, I guess, yeah, olive oil. And it looked a beautiful green, didn't smell burnt, etc. And I actually used this all over my skin this morning. I did add some lemon essential oil. So here are my products: the Bacopa ghee, or Brahmi ghee as it's called, the ashwagandha and Bacopa olive oil, the shatavari ghee, and the ashwagandha ghee. Thanks everybody for watching.